So I'm going to be showing how to apply the stencils. If you got it from me, then it's going to come numbered 1 through 7, and so each piece you start with number 1 at the bottom and then you work from 1 to 7, 7 being the smallest piece that goes at the very top. So I made them right away so that if you put this at the bottom of your board, it's right away going to start at 6 inches because this is the 1 foot mark right here. So it starts at 6 inches so that you can hang it above your baseboard. So it'll be 6 inches above the floor. So this is what it looks like. And they overlap with each other to make it easier to line everything up. So you line it up on this side of the board here, and then you'll put your numbers on here after. So if it has a little bit of a bubble, don't worry, because you can just like squish it out, or you can fix it as you go along. So basically we're just gonna start by putting, you're just gonna start pretty much at the bottom of your board so that the first line is at the bottom here. And then also, like, there's extra material here so that you can kind of bend it over the edge. I mean, you could line it up like this, but it makes a really big gap. So I kind of like to line it up more like that kind of thing, because then you're fairly close to the edge here. And then if you use this line, that also helps to keep everything fairly straight. Okay, so then literally what you do is you're just going to peel it away at the bottom here. There's kind of 2 ways to do it. So this is way number 1. I'll show you number 1 first. So basically then you're just going to line it up where you want it, making sure that it's nice and straight with your board. So you're just gonna kind of be eyeballing it a bit here, and then you're gonna stick it down and you're gonna hold it, and then you can kind of look here too and you can be like, okay, am I happy with the gap there? On the board I made, I had like a pinky width between here, and that's about what I have here, so I am happy with that. So then this is stuck down now. So then what I'm gonna do is you're gonna hinge this backwards, and then you're gonna pull the plastic from behind while you're smoothing with your other hand over here. So like you're kind of going like this. Hard for you guys to see here, but that's basically how you're gonna go about it. And then once you have a bit more peeled back for your first piece here, just double check that you're happy with the placement and everything, and that you're happy with the spacing, and if it looks good, then you can continue. But if it doesn't look good, then just peel it up and reposition it before you get too much further, to try and preserve as much stickiness as possible. Okay, so I actually moved it over a tiny bit more because I wasn't really happy with it. So I moved it this way a tiny bit more, and I'm just continuing to smooth it out here. So just like this. And then you are just, you're smoothing it down really good, working out all your bubbles. This is just really messed up here because of a knot. So you're just smoothing it down there, and then you can bend that down around the edge if you want to, but it's super duper not necessary to do that. The important thing is just that it's sealed really nicely around all of the ruler marks here. And I know you're probably thinking like, oh, how am I gonna paint this? It's so close to the bottom. And that's a very legitimate question. So what you're gonna do for this bottom one, so that you have an easier time not worrying about making a mess right here, is you're gonna just put a piece of painter's tape on this bottom part, and then that way you can just paint and not worry about getting paint on this section here. So yes, you're just gonna smooth everything down, and then you're gonna smooth it all down again, like the minute before you start painting anyways. So it's okay to go ahead and move on to the next section now. So then you would locate piece number 2. So you take piece number 2 and then you're lining up this over top of this. So this is to make it way easier to do it and to line it up and to keep everything situated. So you're just going to eyeball this here. Gotta get right in the shot. Okay, so see, you're just gonna go like that. And then once again, it's just a matter of, as long as this is all lined up, everything should continue to be straight. So now you're just going to, once again, push this down as you're going here and smooth it down. And so you're just going to, okay. So method number 2 for applying it, which you can also do if you want, is to just remove the whole entire stencil from the paper. So this is fine too. And then you would go about your lining up. You hold up the other end while you're doing that. Number 6. So option 1 was to just fold it out of the way, but you could also just cut this off as well. You can just cut it so that then you just have less stickiness to work with here. And then you can just check that it's good to go. And then hinge. Okay, so in this video I'm going to be showing you how to put on the numbers. This is font G, and as you can see it's exactly the same principle as the ruler marks. So for this project my friend wants it all lined up on the right hand side of the board. So yeah, I'm going to just be putting them on using some painter's tape to help me get everything situated. So what I had done was I took a circle of painter's tape and I put it on the back, and then while this was standing up against the wall, I was kind of positioning things and trying to figure out what looked straight as it was up vertically against the wall. And so when I made these numbers, the outer box, so the actual stencil part for every single number is the same. Of course, as you can see, the width of the number is different because, I mean, that is just what happens with fonts. But the height of the letter itself, of the number itself, and the box around it is exactly the same size for them. So what that means is that the number is centered inside of this blue box, which makes it a lot easier for you to line it up because you know that the number is centered, and so you can just kind of work with the grid lines to envision how to line everything up, if that makes sense. So with this, basically what I'm going to be doing is I'm just going to be using the outside of my box as kind of the alignment here. So I'll line up the outside of all my boxes with the far side of the board, and then that way the only lining up I have to do as well is the up and down. So I'll just center, each number is 4 inches. So basically you just kind of want to make sure that the center, the 2-inch mark, which in this case is this line here, and make sure it's lined up with your 1 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot marks here. So yeah, basically I can just use my grid lines to say, okay, so this is 2 inches, which is halfway through my letter. So then I will line it up right like this. And then I'll do the same with that one as well. So you can stick it down, and then you're gonna take a piece of painter's tape and you are going to create a hinge type idea here. I'm actually going to hinge from the bottom because, as you can see, I'm actually going to need to trim. I would need to trim this away because that would be in the way. You want it to be you want this backing paper to be like nice and flush for where your hinge is, just because that's what you're peeling away, right? So you want to be able to work with that there. Yeah, so basically you're just creating a hinge with your painter's tape, and the number 1 for all the fonts, of course, is going to be super easy because there's no loose pieces with it. But for all the fonts on number 6 and for some of the fonts on number 4, as you can see, this is not connected to anything, so this is considered a loose piece. So you're going to put these ones on a little bit differently. But for any of your numbers that are it's just one piece of vinyl, once again, just for demonstration, as you can see, this is technically 2 pieces of stencil. This is not connected to this. So this counts as 2 pieces of vinyl stencil. But for all the other numbers in this particular font, it's just 1 piece. So you're going to use the hinge method to put these ones on. If it's 1 piece of stencil vinyl, you will use this hinge method for it, okay? So what I'm gonna do then is I'm going to peel this back. I'm going to take off that tape because I don't need it anymore. I'm just gonna lay it back down to double check my placement of everything, double check that it's nice and straight up and down, and that it's nice and level and everything. And then you are going to lay it down. And of course, keep in mind too that like your board is never going to be like 110% straight up and down. So just kind of use your mind a little bit too, and your eyes to try and figure out what looks straight and what looks good, and then go with that. And of course, remember too, it doesn't have to be picture perfect. The important thing is just that you get it done and that you don't worry about it too much, and you just get it done so that you can start marking your kids' height on the board. So I'm gonna peel it back, and then you just peel away your backing paper away from the stencil. So as you can see, this is still attached to the tape. The stencil is still attached to the tape. So you're just gonna peel this back a little bit ways, and you're gonna fold it, and then you're gonna hinge back, and you are working from the point of the tape this way. So you're working like this, like we did with the ruler marks, and you are simply just straightening it out and smoothing it down. Okay, see, just like that. And so now you will be able to go ahead and paint those. So we'll keep moving on. We'll do the next number, and then I'll do one or two more of the one piece stencils with some tape to show you, and then I will skip ahead to number 6 so that I can show you how to do it when there are 2 pieces of vinyl. So for all of the fonts, that's number 6, and for most of the fonts, that includes number 4 as well, as the number 4 is usually joined together, of course, so you're going to have an extra piece in the middle. So let's scooch this up a bit like that, and we will do the next number here. Oh, and you can take your tape off and you could reuse it too. So I'll just now, this is basically like, so what I was talking about before is you just want to trim any extra white stuff away so that you have a good place to hinge from. And then, yeah, so I'm just going to put that there and then double check the placement of this first. So this is lined up nicely here. It looks nice and straight there. The halfway mark for this one is not exactly lined up on a line this time, just because of how it worked out. So it's slightly above. The 2-inch mark is slightly above this. So that means I want to scooch this up the tiniest bit here to try and line this up slightly above that line. See if that is better. So I would say that that looks pretty good. So once again, you're gonna hinge this like this. You're gonna remove that, and then you are going to peel only the white away. You're gonna fold it a little bit. You're gonna make sure everything still like didn't shift and that it looks nice and straight still. And then you are going to go ahead and you have to be careful sometimes with these letters that you don't pull too hard. Sometimes it's beneficial actually to just take it off completely so that you're not stretching anything, especially with these numbers. Like number 1 is super easy, it's not complicated, it's just a straight line. But with these other numbers, it can get a little trickier. So it is kind of nice to take the paper off completely, and then you are kind of just like folding it back on itself and then smoothing it down really carefully to try and eliminate any stretching of the stencil so that you don't get any bubbles, if that makes sense. So then you're just securing everything down here, And so then once again, right before you paint, you're going to make sure you go down along all of your edges again immediately before painting, just to make sure that everything is still stuck down really nicely. Let's move on to number 3 a minute. We'll do number 3 and then we'll skip ahead to a number 6. Yeah, as you can see here, like on my number 4, this is technically still one piece because this is connected here. But on some of the fonts, this would be a separate piece of vinyl, so it counts as a 2-piece application method. Sorry about being out of breath. I have a bit of a cold, so a little bit sniffly. So this is lined up nicely here again, as you can see. And then I'm going to determine where the center of this one is. So it's a 4-inch letter. The center is actually like right here. And this is already lined up really nicely, in my opinion, with this mark here. So we are going to go ahead and just continue. If you were hinging from the top, you would want to trim that white off first. But we're hinging from the bottom because, I mean, it doesn't really matter where you hinge from, so I don't need to trim it, it's fine. Once again, peel it back. I'm gonna take the paper off completely again this time, just because I think that this is working better with these more complex, because then see, if you were just pulling it like this blindly, how we were doing before, you might forget that that little piece is there. So this way you can like peel that away really gently, make sure that everything is coming off really nicely away from the paper, and just be like super duper gentle with it. And then you're gonna like pick it up, and you are then once again just going to gently lay everything back down and smooth it out. So I hope that that makes sense there. Once again, yeah, just smooth it down really well, and then right before you come back to paint it, make sure that you're like really pushing, really squishing it down, making a nice seal in it there. Also, I just wanted to say too, if any of your numbers arrive and there's like a little bit of like a bubble in between the blue and the white, don't worry, that's okay. The stencil's not racked, everything's fine. Because when you take that paper away, the bubble is between the stencil and the paper. So that doesn't necessarily mean it's gonna translate to being a bubble between the stencil and your wood. So it's fine. Just do the same thing, and then when you go to lay your stencil down, the bubble will be gone. So it'll be perfectly fine. Let's skip ahead to number 6 then, so I can demonstrate that a little bit better. Make sure this is nice and in the shot here. Okay, so I'm going to trim this a minute so that I have an easier time visualizing how to line it up. Okay, so once again, I'm gonna line it up this way, and then I'm going to figure out where the center of it is. It's kind of handy to like stick it down first before you measure. It keeps everything more still. So this is the top point here, and that's the bottom point. So you can see the 2 is kind of halfway in between this line and this line. You can kind of see that there. So that's where I'm going to eyeball. This is to move this up a little bit so it's between these 2. So peel it up and then just simply slide it a bit. And then now it's better. So I'm just gonna use my tape again here. So now with the 2-piece stencil application, there's kind of like 2 different options. Option 1 being that you basically that you put down the number 6 first without this centerpiece. So basically you would, let's see if I can demonstrate both ways here. So option one, I guess, would be that you put a piece of painter's tape across to essentially keep this piece connected to this piece, if that makes sense. So that would be option number one, because then when you go to peel this away, let's see, it's gonna work here. Just for the sake of doing two demonstrations, see if it'll work for both purposes. Having a hard time getting that off. Okay, so for example, then as you can see, this is now acting as though it's one piece of stencil because the painter's tape is holding it tight. So then you would just boom, 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 put it down, and that's completely fine. The other option would be that you so anyways, the other option would be that you take this away, and then this would stay connected to the white piece. So you would take it off, you would lay number 6 down just like with the one piece application method, and then you would come back after and you would remove the circle just with your fingers, and then you would put it back in to the number 6 by lining up the grid lines. So basically you would just have this as a piece in your hands, the white paper would be gone, and this would be stuck on the wood, and then you would just lay it down by lining this line up with that, this up with this, so you would just be eyeballing it. So that would be option number 2. I prefer the painter's tape one and putting it on as though it's one piece. That's my preferred method, but if you are good at eyeballing things and you want to just work with the outer piece and then the inner circle by lining it up with the grid lines, that's completely fine too. But I prefer doing the painter's tape one, so that's what I'm gonna do here a minute. Put that back on, make it working together there. Okay, see, so we've got now one piece of vinyl stencil here, and then we are simply just laying this puppy down, smoothing it out really good, and then we will go back and remove this other painter's tape after, and then you just hold it down as you're pulling it off so that you don't lift anything again. And then there you have it. There is your number 6. Once again, I just want to really reiterate it. You just, before you go to paint, just push, 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 please. Push everything down super duper good to make sure, to help ensure you don't have any bleeding. Thank you. Okay, we're back here. I'm going to get started painting. I tried the Mod Podge method and I actually really didn't like how it went. So I am going to go back into my tutorial and edit it all. Sorry. Edit it all to reflect that I don't really recommend that anymore. I hadn't tried Mod Podge the first time, and I did say that as a disclaimer, so please nobody get upset with me. But from I did the Mod Podge method on these top ones, and then my paint method with these ones, and the paint, excuse me, sorry, the paint worked way, 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 way better. So I'm gonna have to go back and fix these now. Anyways, so I'm gonna do my numbers. Yeah, I'm using the white paint because I put down white paint on the board first, and then I put gray stain over top of it. So I'm gonna paint first, really, really light coat of white paint to help seal the stencil. And then that way, if there's any bleeding, it will usually be a little bit of white, so it's a little bit less noticeable. So moving forward, what I recommend is that if you are doing just stain. So if you are doing only stain, no paint, only stain, what I think you should do is I think you should seal your stencil with a color of paint that is close to the same color of the stain that you used. So if you stained it gray, use a gray paint to seal your stencil. If you stained it light brown, dark brown, whatever, I just really think that using the paint, you're going to be a lot happier with the results. Using a paint in the same color as your stain, I think you're going to be way happier with those results, opposed to using Mod Podge. Unless you're like an experienced crafter or something and you've used Mod Podge a lot before and you know that you like it and you know it's good, then go ahead and use Mod Podge if you know how to use it. But I think for most people that haven't really done many crafts, DIY, things like this before, just do paint. I think it's gonna be way easier. Just go get a tiny little pot of paint in the similar color as your stain, and I think it's gonna work way better because you're gonna put down a super thin layer of that over top of your stencil. It's gonna seal it really nice, and then you're gonna go back over top with your accent color. So whether that's black or white, whatever color you want everything to end up being on top after. I just think you're gonna have a lot less bleeding and everything, and that it's gonna go a lot better. So in my instance, because I painted and used stain, that's why I'm going back with white, because white is the base color of my board, so that way any bleeding blends in a lot better, and isn't as obviously black bleeding. So yeah, so I just have my interior regular old acrylic latex paint here. It's just wall paint. Put that right there. Yesterday at the dollar store, I found these little guys and they look kind of interesting, so I was maybe going to give this a go. Otherwise, I picked up some sponges as well. Truth be like, these are just from the Dollar Tree. I don't love them though because they are so fat. And when I did this project on my own board the first time, the sponges I was using were a much more like open pore kind of thing. And I just feel like it worked way better. These are like really, really small. I don't know. It's really big this way, so I would have rathered it been like half the width. But I mean, I think it'll still be fine. So I'm gonna give both these things a go and see how I like them. So you're just gonna get some paint on there, dab it off. You don't want too much. Once again, you're gonna first smooth everything down again to make sure that everything is super duper nice and stuck down there. And then you are dabbing up and down, up and down, up and down, really lightly and quickly. So far this is working fairly good, I think. So yeah, you don't need a ton, but just make sure with this base coat here, make sure that you can't see any of the wood along the edges anymore, because if you can see wood, the black paint can see wood, so it could seep through. So just be really diligent that you're getting a good, like, it's kind of hard in a way because you don't want it to be too heavy. Like you're not slapping a ton of paint on here, but at the same time, you do want to make sure that it is sealed properly. So that's why I think just doing lots of nice little dabs is the way to go to get everything as sealed as properly, as sealed as you can. Never putting too much paint on at a time. Try not to get it over the edges. This is maybe a little bit big. That's why I like working with a smaller thing, because then you don't risk getting it on your board here. Or if you're a little bit scared about that happening, you can just slap down a couple pieces of painter's tape as well, like this, and then you don't have to worry about it. I probably should have done that. Especially since this is not my board. This is for my friend. So there, now you don't have to worry quite as much here, and you can get those final pieces good to go. So this would be another reason why I recommend that your board, the base color, has been painted and stained well in advance, because then this way everything is dry 100%, it's cured 100%. You don't risk lifting up any of your paint or your stain on this part of your board with the tape or with the stencils, etc. Yes, you can do this project very quickly in a matter of hours if you wanted to, but most of you are moms, most of you are busy and have other things going on too. So if you do it step by step and space out those steps, you're still gonna be able to get it done pretty quickly, and that way everything is like really nice and dry and you don't risk anything crazy happening. So yeah, we'll move on to number 5 here. Once again, just make sure you don't have too much going on there. If your stencil wasn't sucked down all the way, you can kind of hear it when you're doing this. You can hear it being adhered. Hear the noise. So yeah, you're never swiping. You're always dabbing up and down, because you don't want to push paint underneath of the stencil. You're just trying to hit the wood in between. That's it. I am so sorry about all my snuffles. I know that that's not fun to listen to. Sorry about that. I'll just do one more number with this, and then I will switch over to the other sponge after maybe. So far this is actually going pretty good, I think, by what I can tell here. There we go. So you just do that, let everything dry, you're good to go.